So in my last Truth Within the Numbers video, I showed that everything, creation itself is within you, and that the coding, the mathematical code of nature and reality itself tells the same story. The spoken word of creation can't help but show itself when you understand the script, the storyline itself. This is why the heavens and the kingdoms are within you and through you. And that and that memory, the amnesia of that knowledge has been very purposeful, coming from what I call and others call the mind virus within the code itself, the code of reality. There's other people calls it the demiurge, the sin. It's a disconnection from true organic creation, from the Father, from God, from Source, from love. And the code and Satan, you can call it Satan, the mind virus, the serpent, occupied the throne, which physically is your pineal gland, which made a disconnection from your heart and your mind, and disconnected us and the Creator from the tree of life, which connects us to the true organic code of creation. So everything got inverted. That's why everything here is the inversion of truth, but it still shows you truth, right? And that's why it's so confusing. But that's why the Freemasons, whatever these controlling groups control through the biblical script, through the lost texts, because they understand the Alpha and the Omega creation. Because the infected mind of the Creator created it. And this is why Jesus, within that story, had to pay the debt that was created based on the laws of this creation. That's why it had to create a new covenant, because it was a crucifixion of the mind of the creation, which happens internally to everybody. It's our story. And so to go forward, we must move backwards. But if that history is lost and and everything is hidden, how could you possibly put the pieces together to understand the story? Where basically it's like a book was taken from beginning and end, and different chapters were placed around in a different sequence of the story. But as you read the book, you'll read something that was supposed to happen here in your mind in a linear way, but it happens before this happens, but this needed to happen before that happened. That's what we're dealing with here. Because all history, timelines, the truth of who you are has been scattered. And so, through out of body experiences, through connecting with God, I was shown alphanumerically through the gematria an idea of how this came to be. And so, how we are in an infinite time loop based on the golden ratio and pi, that the code has been looped. And so, let me share my screen. Let's go here. That's the wrong one. Okay. So before, I was showing the electromagnetic nature of numbers, of the letters, and how they are bonded together, and these pieces tell a story. And in my last video, I talked about how gematria itself tells the story of the Messiah, 233. And that was a very specific person, but that person is also you, because Messiah just means anointed one. It is one whose body is light body is completely activated. All DNA is activated. Their heart and their mind are connected, and they are anointed, right? They're anointed fully within the physical body to go to all heavens and kingdoms of this creation. And that's within all of us. The Alpha and the Omega story was the original storyline of this heaven here and the kingdoms within here. So with God showing me this, I started to understand the script. 342. And that it is based on the Alpha and Omega, 341. That beginnings are endings, that the crucifixion of the mind, the crucifixion of the body was both life and death, beginning and end. And this was the storyline that got looped. So with here, we can see how this Alpha and the Omega story transformed into a Christian 340 storyline, text. But the true Christian isn't even true Christianity was within the information and in the lost timelines that have been suppressed, which a lot of it is in the Gnostic text. And Gnostic isn't even a true term, but the Christian, it goes back to the demiurge, 340. So you can start to see the Alpha and the Omega, 341, and then script is 342, is now paired electromagnetically to demiurge and Christian, right? And there's many more terms I can use, but I'm just showing these things that are parts of a whole. They're parts of a story. So then you could go to skull, 340. So you're taking parts of the story and trying to put them back together again. This is Humpty Dumpty. So what happened within the skull? This was the crucifixion of the mind, the serpent, the mind virus taking over the throne of the creator, which therefore inverts the creation. That is why both physically, the place where Jesus was crucified was Golgotha, the place of the skull. Because the inversion of this creation created a system, the demiurge, a satanic system based on ritual sacrifice, where the currency is blood. So what happens physically happens spiritually. And so because it was the inversion of the original thought and creation of the creator, that very consciousness had to pay the debt of that within the parameters of the creation. This is a very, whether people want to believe it or not, it is a very systemized creation. And that's why a new covenant had to be created. And so what I do with these understandings is I take these variables of this number of these numbers in this code, and I start to put back the story together. And so now the alpha and the omega, right? Let me see where I could go with this. So if I'm going to make the statement that the golden ratio and everything is fractalized and it's an infinite time loop, how can you prove that mathematically? Well, simply you have to work backwards from the concept in which you're talking about. So for the golden ratio, 366, you need to figure out what is paired with that. And that is the black sun, 366. So what does that mean? The black sun, if you're not aware, is actually the core. Every heaven has a core within it. And when the creator was infected with the mind virus, that created that throne, the pineal was occupied, because it's both physical, spiritual. It's a hard concept to grasp. But the black sun then created a mind lock. So that original sun, that is the core, was now locked into a looping process, and this is the black cube. And that core is what you would call Saturn, right? That's the real Saturn. And that is why Mecca and Jewish people wear the tefillin, right? The black cube on their forehead, the pineal. That's why in Mecca they rotate around the black cube, because this is the looping of linear time. And so that means this black sun, this golden ratio, can tell us that this is the beginning and the end. That the script, the alpha and the omega script, got hijacked through sin, through the mind virus, and looped the beginning from the end. So the crucifixion, the undoing of that, has to start at this place from beginning and end. And so if that is true, if that is where the crucifixion happened, then you have to understand that this is where this represents the lamb on the cross. 366. Because why the Lamb, which was the Son of God, why it's saying he was the only one worthy. Everybody is worthy. Everybody is the same. But that very consciousness had to pay the debt for what had happened of the creation. Jesus, Michael had to pay the debt in full. And so what I'm saying is that's why with the inversion is child sacrifice becomes the currency. So what happens spiritually happens physically. And that's why real currency, money, became the system of control. That was the physical input, became the instrument in which you control the masses. But then underneath that is the blood. And what everybody is seeing going on now with all this truth being revealed. So the lamb had to go on the cross and had to pay the debt of sin. And so when you put these variables together, lamb is the same code as hell, right? Hell is 53, lamb is 53, and bank is 53. So then you can put together bank cross, connect that back to the beginning and the end, the golden ratio, and the black sun. So I'm putting together these different variables to show the story that the crucifixion paid the debt. And that we're healing that story right now, that everything is completed. It's just now we have to walk through in this storyline, in this biblical script, what happened from the beginning to the end. And so the lamb is the lamp. Revelation 21, the lamb is the lamp, and the lamp is the pineal gland. Let thine eye be single and your body is full of light. That's what Messiah was. That's what anointed was. It's the activation of all of the dormant DNA within us, which will bring back the memory. And so let me go back to here. So I figured out that Jesus Christ, right? Jesus Christ is the password of this system, of this inverted system, which is perpetuated from the mind virus 1275. And like I said, that mind virus locks the mind into a certain perception, physically, spiritually. And so the mind virus is the lock virus 1275. And so you take the variables and you can see that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, 1572, and there was an error. It was the Son of God, 1572, and he paid the debt, 1573, because it was paying the debt of the mind virus, 1573. So who paid the debt? 298 was the Son of God. 297. The story reinforces itself. And basically, you systematically pick it apart. So the Messiah code 295 shows the error code, shows the error 295 that happened to the Son of God 297. Those are still close together. Those are still electromagnetically paired. Because the Son of God is the Alpha Omega. See how if you omit certain words, put it together, you're putting the pieces together, the storyline. Okay. So why it's the password, right? Why 1275 and Jesus Christ is 1275? Because this is basically, so Jesus Earth is free, 1275. For Earth to be set free, part of this script, the password is to understand what truly happened here. And to, I believe, for the consciousness of Jesus, of the creator of Earth, to fully come back to memory. For all of us, all of our memories to come back, I think it has to start with Jesus, because he is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. And so this would be the password for the memories, 1574. So you can see that Jesus Christ, Son of God, 1572, Jesus Christ paid the debt of the mind virus, and this is the password for the memories, for all of our memories to come back of what happened here, who we are. This is the fire and the ice coming together, which creates the water, the living water within. Water holds memory, the memories of what happened. And so how do you, okay, so how do you get to the water, 1199, the water that holds memory, the living water? Well, you have to figure out the pyramid math equation, 1198, because it's the pyramid sin equation, 1198. This is the error code, happened in the pyramid. It happened in the time of Atlantis. It happened in Egypt. Because to fix sin, debt was paid. But sin, 139, is math, 139. It's a fixing in the error of the code, which was only through blood. That's the red door, the infected mind. And so the water, 1199, I already showed this. So to access the water, you need to figure out the pyramid sin equation, 1199. And this is done, and this is how you access the 0 point, 1199. And stick with me. I know this is a lot of different concepts, but as on this channel and as on these videos, as I put these things together, it'll become more clear. The 0 point is our point within the mind where we create. And they artificially access that through the inversion of the system, both in blood ritual sacrifice and money. And to figure out that equation, right, the pyramid sin equation, I was brought to the Federal Reserve, 1199, because it's based on the money. The mind virus is directly connected to both ritual sacrifice and money control. And so this is why paying the debt is both spiritual and physical. Why this whole system is a debt system. The inversion. And so why is it a pyramid? Why on the dollar bill is there a pyramid and the capstone is missing? And why Jesus is referred to as the chief cornerstone, which is actually the capstone. And why is it connected to Atlantis, Egypt? Right? And then why? Let me show this. We're going to go to hmopedia.com. And so why can I put together all of these codes with this within a cipher that is based on the Latin alphabet in this specific ones, tens, and a hundreds format? Well, when you look at the evolution of the alphabet, you'll see that all languages tell the creation story. This is the evolution of the alphabet on hmopedia.com. And it starts in Egypt all the way to English. And you can see that their glyphs, their symbols are actually showing the creation story. And you can do more research on your own on this website, but this is, I believe this was created in 2024 by libthems. But basically, the Egyptian script was the Alpha and the Omega script. This is why that guy, Robert Edward Grant, can find the symbol of the Alpha and the Omega in the king's chamber, as well as these Egyptian glyphs and things on the Last Supper painting, because they're the same thing. And during that time, that is when the return of Christ happened within the biblical storyline. But I don't want to get too far off track. This is the Phoenician, is the story of the phoenix. And the phoenix was the death and rebirth and loop of the creator's mind. The phoenix was Michael, which is Jesus. And so the Phoenician was the phoenix. And you can see that the Alpha and the Omega, the codes, all trickle down to the English language. But you can see this is, but you were talking about the Latin alphabet. The Latin, using the English alphabet in the structure of the Latin alphabet, but now you're saying this is connected to Egypt and it's a subset of Egyptian. and that can be very confusing. But this is where I have to show why it's that way, is because language in the beginning was alphanumeric. It was never just supposed to be to write words, it was to create, it was code. And so when you take a look at what the Egyptians used, the 1, 10, 100, 1,000 cipher, that is exactly what this Latin cipher is, right? Go back here, share this tab. This Latin cipher is ones, tens through 100, right? After 10, right, where you get to 10, and then you go 20, 30, 40, so on and so forth. This is what the ancient Egyptians used, the Atlanteans used. And because this base 10 Fibonacci sequence was the code, and it represented the sun. Okay, so it represented the sun and the creation. And so basically, when you get to 1,000, 1,000 represents the monad or the lotus or the phoenix, the death and rebirth. And you'll see this on iPet Goat too. You'll see this in a lot of things. But okay, so if the alpha and the omega, the true creation code ran off of this, then why does it work in Latin? Why are you finding everything in Latin? Why is that? Why were you shown to use the Latin? Because I was shown that the Vatican is the head of the snake here. That what is locked within the Vatican is the very thing that is perpetuating and locking in the minds and of the creator. And they do that through using this Egyptian blueprint. This is why you will see all of these Egyptian, this obelisk, which represents resurrection, right? The obelisk represents resurrection of Osiris. And you'll see it's in the keyhole because it's a looping, it's a hijack of the code, right? Of the key of death, right? Here's a good one. It's a keyhole. They're using the very blueprint in which the code was created on. And this is why the Pope wears the fish hat, because this is a representation of the sacrifice rituals of the inverted code to the gods that are within Sheol, which is a very aquatic place. It's within where the bottomless pit is. And you look in the biblical text, Sheol is actually it's a place of water. And so, and then you got the hexagon, you got the Star of Rempham. But they use the Alpha and Omega code for their control. The ceremonies, everything. And so what is hidden in the Vatican, the black magic, satanic black magic that they're using, the revelation of that is what unbinds it, because they only have so much time. This will happen. The great return, awakening of everything will happen. So the Jesuits, the Vatican, they hijacked this Alpha and Omega code based off of the sun, because you'll see there's variations of the son of Horus, Apollo, Jesus. because that is both. Apollo is the mere reflection of Jesus. Apollo is Lucifer. Apollo, the sun god, you'll see, is the Statue of Liberty. And this is where you get into that America is actually modern day Israel, and that the whole storyline has been flipped around. And so right here, the lotus is the 1,000, and the 1,000 is the monad. So let me go to, let's go alpha and omega. So from here, you can see that it tells the story. Omega, Hathor, the horns or whatever, forms the omega sign. And Alpha, Shu, was the heir. And you can see that all of these depictions of Horus, the child, always had the Alpha and the Omega on it within a cup. The cup is the mind. Father, take this cup from me. This happens within the mind. But Horus had the sun rays, right? That's on the Statue of Liberty, the solar crown. They're using this script. And so you can see that the monad at 1,000 was the phoenix. So let's do this. So the phoenix, 472, is the infected pineal of an archangel. Okay. And that archangel, Michael, became a fallen angel, 472. But fallen 92 is the same as locked 92. So the infected pineal of a fallen angel is the infected pineal of the locked angel, 472. And that angel, so 472, it's a dualistic code, so it gives you a problem and also the mirror of it. So we need to unlock that angel, Michael, 472, because the name 472, that's the angel's name. And so that's the password within the system, is to basically everything to be disclosed for an unlock. 472 is the same as Lucifer, angel Michael. So Lucifer, angel name is Michael, 472. But I'm getting all over the place. To take you back to the pyramid, let me share this. Let's see. I wonder. Let me copy this. Boom, boom. Let me just add it to here. Okay. So now the debt paid of Jesus, which is also the mirror aspect of Lucifer, was both spiritual of a blood ritual sacrifice and a and physical, because the system based on the inversion uses money to control the 0 point of creation, which which is your ability to connect your heart and your mind, your pineal gland, and this is why the capstone was removed. And so this is the great seal. When all of this is found out, this seal is broken. This represents blood ritual and currency. And so this has to fall. And so now this is how you connect the control of money to this alpha and omega script, and how I'm able to do that through the gematria. And if you're with me still, thank you for staying with me. This is a very hard concept, but what I'm showing, these 72 bricks are in 13 rows. So now I can take this to 72 because it's very illogical what I'm saying, but you don't use logic. God isn't logic. It is math, but also a story. So 72 rows, money is 72, right? The world is 72. Bitcoin, 72. I'm just showing aspects of what that 72 code is showing you, that is this is the Bible math, 72. And sin, and this is the Bible sin, 72. Right? And that debt, that sin, right? That debt locked the mind. It was a lock, the mind virus on the mind. 72 or 71, right? Which is next to 72. It's one below. And so as we go further, that debt lock, that price paid this goes back to a sacrifice, 73, because the sacrifice became the atonement, became the debt being paid in full. Therefore, undoing the lock within the mind, which accesses the key of death. So this sacrifice goes back to Egypt, 73. And that's why the sacrifice, the system, is based on the children, 73, the innocence. It always has to go back to the children, because to find the kingdom of God, you must be childlike. That child is within your heart. And spiritually, I feel like our hidden child has been disconnected. And so that's what the system runs on, the money system, the currency. And everything brings you back to Egypt, the obelisk, right? I think I showed Egypt, 73. This is a sacrifice of the mind. So this, maybe I'll end it right here because this was a lot of information, a lot of things that is very abstract and hard to put together if you're seeing it for the first time. But it's something. So I solved the equation, right? To solve the pyramid, the Egyptian alpha and omega equation, you need to look back and it solves sin, right? Sin is the error in the code 42,139, which is math 42,139. And why is it 42? 42. 42-degree angle. Here we go. Let me share this tab. No. Let's bring it up. Basically, the pyramids are angled at 42 degrees because is the radius in which, so a rainbow's angular radius is 42 degrees from the shadow of your head in the opposite direction of the sun. And that is also the degree in which you can perceive a rainbow. So this is the rainbow bridge. This is your pineal gland on the capstone connecting and the error code being fixed. So that's what's being solved. And so that's 42 is math, 42 is sin, 42 degrees. So when you solve this, when you solve the pyramid sin equation, 1198, you stop the pineal pyramid loop, 1199. And that loop is of the sun, the creator itself, and it will be complete freedom, 1199. So hopefully this is just the beginning. It's to bring everything together. It's a very hard concept to explain, but I'm going to do my best. Yeah.